Hello friends, and welcome to a brand new camera comparison between the iPhone 16 Pro and its predecessor, the 15 Pro. Right now, we are recording at 4K at 30 frames per second. Tell me in the comment section below which one do you think has better colors and which one has a better audio.
As is standard on our channel, let's begin with a set of samples taken using the main cameras of both devices. First, let me clarify the testing process. Each daylight picture is captured in auto mode, with no edits applied afterward. Both phones produce similar images with nearly identical color tones, but there are some subtle differences, which I'll break down. The new iPhone 16 Pro performs slightly better in shadowed areas, such as the greenery, where details are more visible compared to the 15 Pro. The greenery and sky appear nearly identical. The building in the newer phone's image is slightly more vibrant, which is the only notable difference in this sample. In some cases, such as this one, the iPhone 16 Pro has a slightly more vibrant overall appearance. In contrast, the iPhone 15 Pro produces images with a more subdued color tone. Nevertheless, as noted earlier, the difference remains minimal. In more challenging situations, noticeable distinctions become apparent. In this scene, the iPhone 16 Pro performs better across the board. Apple describes the main camera of the 16 Pro as the Fusion camera, and in this sample, it significantly outperforms its predecessor. Both phones are equipped with ultra-wide cameras, and, as observed previously, their performance is largely similar. Yet, in this instance, the iPhone 16 Pro displays slightly cooler colors compared to the iPhone 15 Pro, which has a much more vivid color representation. In most samples, the iPhone 16 Pro generally shines at highlighting darker areas more effectively. The difference compared to their main cameras is somewhat more pronounced. The greenery is typically brighter and more noticeable on the newer 16 Pro, and while the 15 Pro is still almost just as good, I still like how the 16 Pro renders pictures. Nevertheless, in sample like this one I couldn't actually find any differences at all. This just shows that both ultra-wide cameras are fantastic and the new improvements on the 16 Pro aren't as noticeable, at least when it comes to daylight. Both phones achieve 2x without detail loss, but there is a slight difference in color. The iPhone 16 Pro is somewhat sharper and warmer, while the iPhone 15 Pro has a slightly cooler tone. The iPhone 16 Pro features a new 5x periscope sensor, and the difference from the 3x optical zoom on the 15 Pro is quite noticeable. Both cameras are sharp at their native zoom levels, but the 16 Pro brings the subject much closer. When comparing the 15 Pro at 5x, it falls short of the 16 Pro's quality, as it relies solely on digital zoom. The 15 Pro's image is darker and has some traces of noise. As before, at 2x both are really good. The iPhone 16 Pro offers slightly more contrasty colors, but overall, they are quite similar. With their telephoto sensors, both phones are sharp, but the 5x zoom on the 16 Pro represents a significant improvement over the 3x zoom of the 15 Pro. As expected, the 15 Pro loses detail when zoomed in to match the 16 Pro at 5x. The new iPhone provides much sharper images, whereas its predecessor shows considerable detail loss. By the way, if you are enjoying the video so far, then a sub to the channel would be greatly appreciated. Portraits have consistently been a strength of the iPhones, and these two models are no exception. In this instance, I can't detect any differences between them, as both are very sharp and accurately represent my skin tone. The next sample reveals a distinction. Here, only the iPhone 16 Pro produces a favorable result. The iPhone 15 Pro results in a much darker appearance for my face and hair, while the 16 Pro maintains a more accurate representation of my skin tone. Additionally, the background colors are rendered more effectively on the newer device. Pictures taken with their front cameras remain impressive and largely similar. In this particular sample, the iPhone 16 Pro makes my hair slightly more visible, but my face retains consistent and natural colors on both devices. The next sample shows a bit more variation, with my skin color appearing slightly overexposed on the iPhone 15 Pro. While both devices remain very sharp, I prefer the results from the newer iPhone 16 Pro in this instance. iPhones are known to be the best smartphones for video recording, and naturally the iPhone 16 Pro is no different. The difference with the 15 Pro is almost non-existent since both are fantastic. Their colors are spot on, the dynamic range is excellent, and the stabilization is really good too. The 16 Pro can record up to 4K at 120 fps, but for this test, we only tested them at 30 frames per second. Their similarities continue even when we record with their ultra-wide cameras. I had to zoom in quite a bit to see if they are any bit different, but honestly, they look identical to me. This isn't really a bad thing since the 15 Pro was already the best for videos. When we record with the telephoto sensors, we can clearly see the difference in their focal lengths. At 5x the 16 Pro zooms in much closer, and this is a better implementation compared to its predecessor. The older 15 Pro is really good too, but I prefer the zoom capabilities of the new 16 Pro. Moving to low light, and with night mode enabled and set to auto seconds for every picture. Here only the iPhone 16 Pro manages to preserve the details of my face and hair. The iPhone 15 Pro falls short in this regard, making the 16 Pro's performance a notable improvement. In the next sample, the background light sources were quite distracting, yet both phones successfully keep my face in focus. However, the glare in the background is much more pronounced on the older model, which is why I once again preferred the newer iPhone 16 Pro. With their main cameras, the performance is similar in low light, much like in daylight, but the iPhone 16 Pro tends to be slightly brighter. Brighter does not necessarily mean better, so it ultimately comes down to personal preference. In some cases, the added brightness of the 16 Pro makes a noticeable difference, such as in this sample where light sources were limited. While both phones are sharp, I still prefer the 16 Pro. In other samples, the differences are less pronounced. The sky may vary, but the greenery and buildings appear similar between the two devices. Today's flagship main cameras are outstanding, and even if you choose last year's model, like the iPhone 15 Pro, you won't be disappointed. Its camera performance remains excellent and comparable to the 16 Pro. Everything changes, however, when switching to their ultra-wide cameras. The picture taken with the iPhone 16 Pro is significantly sharper and brighter compared to its predecessor. It appears that the new ultra-wide sensor on the 16 Pro represents a substantial improvement. During my use of the iPhone 15 Pro, I never considered its ultra-wide camera to be bad. In fact, I always appreciated its results. However, seeing it side by side with the 16 Pro has been surprising, as the newer model clearly outperforms the older one. The 16 Pro shines in low light, as demonstrated here where the trees are much more visible. While the 15 Pro is impressive on its own, I find the 16 Pro to be superior. During the day, the differences are less pronounced, but the enhancements with the new ultra-wide camera are particularly evident in low-light situations. The 16 Pro especially shines in capturing fine details. At 2x both devices are amazing and both take really good pictures with plenty of details. At 3x the 15 Pro switches to its telephoto camera while the 16 Pro uses digital zoom. Obviously, the older phone is much sharper. The tables turn when we switch at 5x. Now the 16 Pro uses the periscope camera while the 15 Pro crops in digitally. Clearly the 16 Pro is much better now with the older model starting to lose details. In this other sample, just like earlier, at 2x both remain great, but I think the 15 Pro is actually doing better with light reflections. Surprisingly, even at 3x the difference is minimal here despite the fact that the 16 Pro is using digital zoom only. The 15 Pro is a bit sharper, but they are very similar. At 5x the 16 Pro is amazing with plenty of details while the 15 Pro as expected isn't as good. Honestly, the new 5x makes the iPhone 16 Pro a much more compelling device. So guys, what do you think? Naturally, the iPhone 16 Pro has some improvements like the better ultra-wide and the better zoom, but in general their cameras are very similar to each other and an upgrade only for these features isn't really worth it. If you did enjoy this video, a thumbs up would be appreciated. Thank you for watching and I'll see you in the next one.